Hi, everyone. I'm Beth Wanner of Mother Cover. Today, we're diving into the fourth of our four pillars around parental leave. And today, we're talking about return. So, what actually happens when someone comes back to work? I'm joined by Lori, who's the founder and CEO of Mindful Return, an organization that supports parents through the transition back to work and partners with employers to build those return experiences positively. So, Lori, I'm really excited to have this conversation with you today. Thank you for being with
It
me.
is a delight to be here, Beth. I'm excited to speak with you.
Your work has been such a cornerstone in parental leave, especially what happens after leave. At Mother Cover, we talk a lot about how parental leave isn't just about the time away, it's how you leave, it's how your work is handled, and then critically, it's how you come back. And the return to work piece is where I think most well-intentioned companies have fallen short. There just hasn't been as much focus as everybody's talking about transition and how to ease that person into leave, but not as much about returning. So I'd love to unpack all of that with you,
Yes.
starting with, on the not so great side, where do things tend to go wrong? So from what you've seen, where do organizations most commonly miss the mark when it comes to bringing someone back from parental leave?
Yeah. So I think there's the personal piece and there's the organizational piece. And for the individual person, what I often see is an expectation from a new mom, for example, that everything will just be like feeling great and she'll be back in the swing of things in like a week. And I like to say that the return to work is not an event, it is a many months long process. And so, on the organizational side, to the extent the organization can view the return as a many months long process and put touch points and conversations on the calendar throughout the first couple of months back, I think everyone will start setting an expectation that this isn't okay, we're done, like wipe our hands and everything's back to normal.
I circled the date on the calendar. I remembered that
Yes.
you were returning. Job well done.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. So I think another challenge that organizations have, and managers in particular, is assuming that they know what the person needs or doesn't need, and also assuming that perhaps there is a one size fits all response for each individual employee. So, I mean, on the one hand, if an employer is completely not even acknowledging the fact that the new parent's life has changed, that's a problem, right? If I had mom after mom come into my office, shut the door, burst into tears and say, why does everybody think that like I'm just exactly who I was a couple of months ago? That's a problem. But then also, if a manager is assuming, for example, that new mother does not want to do work travel without, telling her, having a conversation about that fact, and she's being deprived of professional opportunities that she otherwise would have had and had every intention of continuing to do work travel, that's a problem. And on the other hand, there might be a woman who has zero interest in work travel. So I think the point here is to have very specific, tailored conversations that hit on the key points that relate to the return to work from leave, and to have an ongoing dialogue between manager and direct report. There's one organization that I helped develop sort of a guide for the manager and then the guide for the employee, and they came at the same topics from different lenses, but it was like, make sure you talk about X, just to make sure that the conversations are happening on a regular basis. I mean, I'll close this thought with, believe in her for the long haul. Believe in her for beyond that first week back. Or him, if it's a dad returning from leave. Things are going to look very different in 2 months than they do in the very first week that someone returns, when things might be a little bit more discombobulated.
I love that in the news today, depending on when people end up watching this, but there's been a full page ad taken out on the definition of matrescence.
Yes.
So even just recognizing one, if you don't know that word, Google it. But it's basically putting a definition to the transformation that somebody goes through when they become a mother which is physical, spiritual, emotional, mental, that we go through the biggest brain changes that's actually measurable in that a human being goes through in their lifetime. So even just knowing that and bringing that into conversations is like, this is something very powerful that this person has gone through, versus us almost seeing it as those hidden assumptions that they're not going to want to travel, or they're going to be less committed, less motivated, all those sort of things. So bringing those conversations out and on the surface, I think, is critical, and that's why I really admire the work that you're doing. So we've kind of folded those, what I had for the first two questions, into one of what does it look like when a company isn't doing this well, but on the flip side, when a return to work is handled really well, what feels different about that? And how do you see companies, we talked about this in one of the previous pillars, get around not it being boiling down to a matter of winning the manager lottery? So like you have a really good supportive manager, but how can they systematize this without it being too prescriptive? But how can they make sure this is embedded in how their culture operates?
No, I love that question. I would love a world in which manager training on parental leave was a standard part of a curriculum for all people who are becoming people managers. I do a fair amount of manager training myself, and the ones that work best, the trainings that work best, in my opinion, are ones where the training is developed alongside the organization's mission and values, and those things are woven in to the tips around parental leave. So if your organization really values creativity, for example, then making sure that you are showing them that the way that they treat their employee coming back from leave can tie directly to that creativity pillar, and sort of giving them that particular buy-in. I mean, I do a list of say this, don't say that, don't say it's a vacation, do say, I hope you're doing well. So I think manager training is one thing. And then the other piece of it is, I think, just having it be normalized that humans go out on leave for any number of reasons. We go out because we have a loved one who's ill. We go out because someone has passed away. We go out because we have a baby. It's not just parental leave that causes a leave. And I think that can perhaps get more buy-in from people who may not be interested in having children or really care about the topic of babies, for example.
Yeah. Or thinking that this only affects maybe 5% of my workforce. When you think about leave more broadly, as you define, mental health leave can be part of that, even sabbaticals.
Exactly.
Things like that. Something that I'm always harping on is we all have things that we care about outside of our lives, and that should just be built into the life cycle of an employee and how we manage that as an employer.
Yes. And to say, hey, we don't actually have any structured supports in place for how someone returns from leave, and to do something about it, to just take that next step, to acknowledge the gap, and then try to at least fill it in some small way that can expand over time.
Yeah, definitely. So when that early return to work window is coming up, it can feel like a lot. And as you said, it's not a date on a calendar. It is several weeks, months. It is a transition period. How can managers support new parents through that, maybe let's say the first 30 to 90 day window, and balancing that with the business needs?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think I'm going to just keep coming back to ongoing communication is so necessary and important. I tell the new parents who are coming back that when they're, in the return, they should be planning one-on-one conversations with their key stakeholders. So if you're a manager, you can help prompt those conversations and put it on the calendar. And I advise the new parents to do two things. One, say, what did I miss while I was gone? And two, how can I help now that I'm back? Sort of having a more future-oriented perspective. I did it not that way the first time, and I spent like 3 months trying to catch up on everything. So I think from a manager's perspective, if they can recognize that there might be some overwhelm that's coming not only with the baby, but with everything that they've missed at work, and help them reorient to future projects and plug in to have that forward-facing perspective on work, I think that can help the individual feel needed. I think a manager can have good conversations around what is too much and what is not enough. I've had people say to me, I don't even know why I'm back. Nobody's giving me any work and I'm just sitting there and it's useless. And then I've had people say, I'm back and I'm working, 24/7 and this is not good either. I think flexibility in those first couple of months is so, so important. I really applaud the organizations that have formal ramp up policies. I've worked at a law firm, for example, where the first month back, you came back at 60%. The next month you did 80%. And then the third month was 100% at no change in pay. Yes, there are business needs that need to be met. And there are also human needs. We want you as an employee to be able to survive, thrive, speak in relatively coherent sentences, get some sleep, that sort of thing. And I think any careful attention that you pay to those first couple of months really, really instill a sense of gratitude and often loyalty on the part of the returning employee.
Yeah, I have often said, like, don't underestimate that power of just being seen as a human being and supported during those critical life moments. The thinking, like, those parents will move mountains for you when this was a safe, supportive environment for them. Like I said, when they needed it most. And you see the reverse in stats of about a third of women leave their roles within 18 months of returning when that support isn't there. So you want, obviously, to retain that valuable employee, and thinking about it this way again as not a moment, but a whole transition that needs supporting, goes so long into that retention and motivation and loyalty that you want.
Yeah, and I was just going to add, to the extent managers can focus on and be aware of the skills that people are gaining through parenthood that are directly applicable to their jobs, then we can counter this narrative that somehow, because this woman just had a baby, she is less intelligent, which is what some studies show people think about new parents, which I'm like, that's just ridiculous.
Negative connotations around baby brain. It's like, my baby brain was phenomenal.
Yeah. Like complete neuroplasticity, lots of rewiring in amazing ways. Parents are gaining skills that people in organizations pay a lot of money to train folks on. A lot of emotional regulation and prioritization and leadership qualities that you want in your organization. So I've had people say to me, yeah, my employee like really grew up a lot whenever they had their kid and came back. So be aware of those things and make sure that you're commenting on them and noticing the growth and development that person is bringing to your team.
And this is where cultures need to evolve overall, not just for parents, but the more that we can measure on outcomes versus time in seat. That's what I think as one of the strongest qualities that I had, and I heard that from so many other parents as well too. And you touched on it about prioritization of, I have less hours in the day now as I'm constrained by childcare drop-offs and pickups and how I want to structure my day, but I am more productive in the hours that I have now because there's no fluff. And I have to be ruthless about what is worth the time, what's going to move the needle, versus, again, making room for some of that fluff that I probably would have been like, well, I can work till 8 p.m. every night. It's fine. But I'm producing more now with less time.
Yes. I wrote a blog post once called "There's No Time for Drama When You're a Working Mama." Like all the office gossip, like none of it. Like you can't do any of that anymore.
Yeah, I love that. Very catchy. So this, thank you very much for shedding your vast experience on helping both the parents and companies transition back to work. It's a very important reminder that this isn't a moment. So I want to end on an actionable takeaway. So if there's one action that leaders or companies or parents should take as we're in Women's History Month to better support parents returning from leave, what would you suggest?
I suggest going and looking at your data, because if something isn't measured, it doesn't matter. And so I would recommend that you go and take a look at, for example, how many people have taken leave? Are the men and women in your organization both taking leave at equal rates? And then look at the departures, right? Look at who's leaving and see, are we losing caregivers? And if so, like, can we take a closer look at why that might be happening? I was at an organization once where we started looking at the data and we found that the dads were taking their full leave for about 2 years, and then it dropped off and the dads stopped taking the large amount of
Yeah.
leave. And like no one had noticed this, and I actually don't know what was going on because once we found that out, the inquiry stopped. But I think it's really important to know your numbers and to know what's going on in your organization. So go
Yeah,
look at some
we measure
data.
everything else.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, within our companies, and yeah, that old saying of what measures matters.
Yeah.
So I
Then
think
you can
that's
use that data to build a case, for example, that maybe you do need to work on a program. But if you don't have that data to empower you, then it's harder to make the case.
yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that takeaway. Thank you for joining me. Really grateful for the work that you're doing. As I said at the beginning, I think this is one of the biggest areas that companies need to focus on and is overlooked. So thank you for the work that you are doing in this space.
Likewise, Beth, I appreciate our shared passions and I'm glad that we are working to solve for all of these challenges. Thanks for having
Me
me.
too. Thanks.